In other news, the US President Donald Trump is due to virtually address the World Economic Forum in Davos. His speech comes days after he resumed office for the second time. It also comes on the heels of NGO Oxfam warning of an aristocratic oligarchy emerging. For more on this story, we can bring in Rebecca Riddell, Economic Justice Policy Lead at Oxfam America. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Now, the newly installed US President will be addressing the global elite he balks at, but Donald Trump is part of this elite, isn't he?
Uh, First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure. And yes, so President Trump's decision to dial into Davos today is a clear signal of what seems to be his main presidential priority, which is pandering to fellow billionaires.
Now, fellow billionaires were firmly in the shot when Donald Trump was being sworn in. What does this mean about his second term in office?
Well, Oxfam and organizations like us and the people we work with certainly expect and are preparing for President Trump to be a president of and for billionaires and for his administration to potentially fan the flames of inequality in the US, but also globally. His team is set to be the richest ever to run the US government, a cabinet worth the richest cabinet in history and a team overall worth over $450 billion.
Now, the wealth of billionaires, according to Oxfam, grew 3 times faster last year. Why do you think that there is this reluctance on the part of governments to level the playing field?
Mm. Well, yeah, that's a great question. I want to step back and say, every year Oxfam puts out a global inequality report as the sort of private jets are descending onto Davos. And this year, we found that the billionaires have a lot to celebrate, even compared to recent years. Their wealth has increased tremendously. This less than $3 trillion, or less than 3,000 people, their wealth went up by $2 trillion, right? That's unimaginable.
Mm.
Last year, we had predicted that there would be the world's first trillionaire within a decade. Now, our expectation is there would be 5 trillionaires within that time frame, and that's just because of how fast billionaire wealth is increasing. And you asked about why steps aren't being taken to address this type of extreme inequality, right? And I think, we have to think about how the very richest folks, they're not just getting more wealth, they're also getting more power. And nothing really exemplifies that better than seeing a billionaire, Donald Trump, backed by the world's richest man, sworn in as president of the US, right? This is oligarchy in action. We're so concerned about the ability of the ultra wealthy to really shape political decision making in their favor. So I think that's a key factor behind this.
We had the outgoing U.S. President Joe Biden warn of an oligarchy taking hold in the United States. He was president for 4 years. What did he do to combat this?
Yeah, I have to say, it's a strange moment when the president of the U.S. is even talking about oligarchy and the risks of that. Something we and others have been warning about for a while, but a few years ago, you might have thought about a James Bond villain or a rogue state, and now it feels like we don't have to use our imagination anymore to think about oligarchs. We can just look at the newspaper. The reality is these are decades, and in some cases, as we talk about in the report, centuries of really wrong-headed policy decisions, and often a bipartisan embrace of a very pro-capital type of policy making. And so while the Biden administration did take steps in response to pressure from workers and families, of course, these are problems that haven't yet been resolved and are going to take a lot of political will to tackle.
Does the global political context, change the stakes of the meeting underway in Davos this year?
I think it's a good question. It's one we get asked a lot, what's going to happen at Davos? And I think, if nothing else, it's an opportunity for dialogue. And that's what we hope is happening with so many billionaires, world leaders, politicians coming together. It's a really important time to talk about these problems. In a way, the need to tackle extreme wealth and the risks of not doing so have never been more clear. And so we certainly think that should be front and center at Davos this year.
Rebecca, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. That was Rebecca Riddell from Oxfam America.